Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Blurbs the Word, how to write bedazzled, compelling, and BS-free blurbs for queries, back covers, and beyond. I'm your host, Hannah Cates. I am an author, editor, and also a best-selling ghostwriter. I also happen to be a resident editor here at WriteHive, and I'm so excited to be back at another WriteHive Live. It's always so much fun. I will be your captain on this expedition into the magical world of blurbs, what they are, what they aren't, how to write one, and how to write a good one. So a few things before we begin. Please save your questions for the end of the session. I will be hanging around in the Discord to answer them. And after the conference, if you still have questions or if you want to chat about anything that we talked about here, please feel free to reach out to me on Discord, on Twitter, or at my website. That's www.authorhannahcates.com. All right, so we will get into the meat and potatoes, blurbs, what they are and what they are not. First off, your blurb is not a synopsis. Let me say that again. Your blurb is not a synopsis. So what is the difference between a blurb and a synopsis? Put simply, a blurb is what you find on the back of a book. It's the description on Amazon or Goodreads. Believe it or not, it's also the short description that you are going to use in your query. So you might be thinking, oh, well, Hannah, I'm not published yet, so I don't have to know how to blurb. Nay, nay, my friend. Everyone needs to know how to blurb. You'll still be blurbing after you become a famous uber rich author selling bajillion copies and running around on your mega yacht. You will still be blurbing on your yacht, I promise you. So the synopsis is what you're going to find when you read the plot section of a Wikipedia article. And if you're struggling to write a synopsis or struggling with what a synopsis should look like, I actually highly recommend that you go to Wikipedia and check a few of those out because they tend to be very good. It's a good way to learn what a synopsis is and how to write one. So let's go ahead and break this down. I'm going to share my screen again here. A blurb is a taste of what the book is about. Essentially, it's a sales pitch to convince your reader that this is the book they're looking for. It does not include spoilers. It does not give away the ending. A synopsis, on the other hand, it tells you everything that happens. It is a play-by-play recap. There are spoilers included, there is an ending included, and it is going to take you all the way from point A to point B. And a lot of people ask, okay, well then why doesn't the blurb have spoilers? If you've read the whole plot on the back of the book, why would you read the book? Now, we're going to be covering fiction and also nonfiction in this class, and you've probably seen a nonfiction book that says, in this book, I'm going to teach you such and such. But that's not necessarily giving away the farm. That's telling your reader that they're in the right place. If you're looking to learn this and that, then you've found the right book. It tells you that what you're going to accomplish by reading that book, not exactly how you're going to do it. So let me emphasize something very important. If you hear nothing, hear this. Your blurb is not for you. I say again, your blurb is not for you. I see this again and again, and I'm guilty of it myself. Creatives become so enamored with their beautiful prose and their vision that they fail to communicate to their audience that this indeed is the book that they've been searching for. Have you ever seen a preview for a show or a movie? Maybe it's got explosions, maybe it's got famous actors and a great soundtrack, but you get to the end of it and you have no idea what the darn thing is about. That is an ineffective blurb. That's an ineffective trailer. Of course, there's always room for interpretation and creative license. I am by no means trying to squelch your dream and your creativity. If you are Jordan Peele or Wes Anderson, it's a lot easier to pitch something off the basis of your artistic brand alone. But my friends, you are not Wes Anderson. You are not Jordan Peele. And if you are, I apologize, Mr. Anderson or Mr. Peele. I just assumed that you wouldn't be at my class. You don't have the same brand recognition. You don't have the same room for vagary. So I'm going to tell you something that my editor told me a long time ago, way back in the before 4 times. She looked at me and she said, Hannah, you need to learn how to follow the rules before you start breaking them. Your blurb essentially is a sales pitch. It is for your audience. What are they looking for? What are their wants and what are their needs? Now, I know that sounds awfully commercial and cold and calculated and consumerist, but think about what a blurb does. It convinces an agent to represent you. It convinces somebody to pick up your book and spend money on it. So your story may be once upon a time, but your blurb is Shark Tank. Now we're going to get into what makes a good blurb. We know what it does. How do you write a good one? A good blurb is going to tell your reader that they found exactly what they're looking for, whether that may be an answer to their question or maybe just some good disassociative entertainment. With that being said, I want you to keep in mind that your book isn't for everyone. It can't be for everyone. Your spicy YA dungeon fantasy is not going to appeal to someone looking for a gift for their 5-year-old niece. At least I sincerely hope that is not the case. And that's okay. Focus on your audience, focus on your people. The blurb is for your readers. It's not going to appeal to everybody, and no book has ever appealed to everyone. So, what are the components of a good blurb? A good blurb is going to answer 5 questions. Who is our main character? What do they want? What is keeping them from getting what they want? What must they do to overcome that obstacle? And why do I care, or what are the stakes? I call these the 5 W's. And if you've ever done a query class with me, these should look awfully familiar because the body of your query is bum, 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 wait for it. Oh, it's a blurb. It is a blurb. So we're going to go ahead and go in depth with each of these questions, and I'm going to do so for a fiction example and a nonfiction example. And I know that most people in this class probably write fiction, but believe me when I say I ghostwrite nonfiction. I've done copy editing and copywriting for years. The insight that you get into nonfiction is only going to make your fiction stronger when you understand the mechanics. So let's go back into these questions here. The first one being, well, the real question is, can I control my computer? Yay. Who? Who is our main character? That sounds easy enough, right? But remember, your audience doesn't know your character like you do. You're going to have to give them some context around this character and why this character is interesting. What makes them special? What makes them fascinating? Why are they the character we want to follow? This is the difference between Stacy and Stacy, the zany yodeling ballet instructor. For nonfiction, think about your audience. They're looking to feel seen. Who is the main character? It's them. It's the reader, the person who's looking for answers, the person who's searching for a solution to their pain point. Our second question here, what does your main character want? They want to be able to control technology. In fiction, pretty easy, right? Pretty straightforward. What is your main character after, or what is motivating them? When I look at a blurb, I absolutely 100% need to see motivation. Motivation is agency, and a character without agency, a character where things just happen to them and they don't want anything and they're not after anything, that's just really boring. So what are they after? What are they trying to do? For nonfiction, this is pretty straightforward. Your reader or your main character, they want a 4-hour work week. They want to learn how to invest their money. They want to learn how memory works. They want to learn how to use biohacks to be more effective, or how to be a great corporate leader. Remember, your reader is picking up your book looking for something. Acknowledge what they're looking for. Acknowledge that want. Make sure they know they're in the right place when they pick up that book, and they read the blurb. I was getting ahead of myself, so we'll go to the third W. What is keeping your main character from what they want? In fiction, this is the antagonist, the obstacle, or the villain. I saw a great Twitter quote the other day from Agent Eric Smith, who quoted someone at his writing group. That person said, "A problem that a character can walk away from is a book a reader can walk away from." In order for there to be an adventure, there has to be a problem, some opposing force. Katniss Everdeen wants to provide for her family and save her sister's life, but she has to fight a bunch of kids in a gladiator-style death match. Bella is completely boring and wants to date Sparkle Pants Edward, but he's a vampire and a grudge-holding acquaintance is dead set on murdering her in revenge against him. Scrooge wants to shut out the world and hide behind his false sense of financial security, but then the ghost of his partner shows up to warn him of a terrible fate. In nonfiction, this is going to be your reader's pain point. If they knew how to solve their pain point, they wouldn't be coming to you and your book for answers. They want to make more money, but they don't know how to save that money. They want a shorter work week, but they don't want to cut down on profit. They want to be a better parent, but they don't know how to deal with a headstrong child. They want to be healthier and more zen in the throes of their chaotic work week. Excuse me. But they don't know how to set up their schedule to accommodate that. So call out that villain, that obstacle, that pain point. If you don't identify what needs to be overcome, you can't show your reader the way towards that growth that they're seeking. And that gets us to the third what. What does the character need to do to overcome that obstacle? In fiction, this is the quest, the journey, the adventure. Frodo needs to bring the one ring of power all the way to Mount Doom. Katniss needs to find a way not to die. Ebenezer Scrooge needs to go on this crazy adventure with 3 ghosts to figure out how to turn his life around and escape his horrible afterlife. In nonfiction, you're going to tell the reader what you're going to teach them in order to overcome their pain point. Remember, this isn't giving away the fun. You're telling them what the solution is, not how to implement that solution. I'm going to show you how to reorganize your schedule. I'm going to empower you to reclaim your gut health. Through this or that method, I'm going to teach you how to do that thing you want to do. And that leads us to our last W, my personal favorite. Why do I care? What are the stakes? And I know that seems a little harsh, and a little snarky, but I'm a little harsh and a little snarky. And remember, you're competing against every other book, every other query, every other pitch for your reader's attention, and you are not entitled to that attention. Some agents are getting 300 queries across their desk every single day. So having those nice, thick, juicy stakes is essential. You need to make me care about the outcome. You need to make me care about what happens in this book. What happens to this character? Or what will happen to you, the reader, with or without the knowledge that you're going to read in this book. Fiction, it's a little less concrete. A good way to think about the stakes, what happens if your character succeeds, and what happens if they fail. Now, remember, this is true of all the 5 Ws. You do not have to ham fist anything. You don't have to literally say, if so-and-so succeeds, the kingdom will be saved. But if they don't, the whole world will be turned into spaghetti or whatever. You can have some nuance. You can imply the stakes. Just be careful that you're not vague and that you provide the reader with appropriate context to understand. So in the Hunger Games, it is more a bit in your face. If Katniss doesn't succeed, she's literally going to get murdered by a bunch of children. That's terrifying and also interesting. I kind of want to see what happens next. In A Christmas Carol, if Scrooge doesn't change, he's going to be doomed to a horrible afterlife. And poor little tiny Tim's probably gonna, like choke to death. That's horrible. I'm interested to find out what's happening, Does this kid get saved? But if we're talking about something less concrete, for instance, The Devil Wears Prada, which we're going to look at that full blurb later because it's fantastic. The last line reads, as things escalate from the merely unacceptable to the downright outrageous, Andrea begins to realize that the job a million girls would die for may just kill her. And even if she survives, she has to decide whether or not it's worth the price of her soul. Nonfiction, I want you to think about the difference your book is going to make in your reader's life. They'll learn how to invest for a happy, comfortable retirement. They'll spend their time actually working on boosting their business rather than putting out fires in their business. They'll learn how to fight, they'll learn how the fight or flight triggers in their brain work so they can better understand their own anxiety. Think about what your reader's life looks like with your book, and then go back and think about what your reader's life looks like without it. This is going to tell you your stakes. In the Story Genius blurb, which is ironically actually genius, I'm going to dissect it later in our nonfiction example, Lisa Cron makes the stakes clear. You can struggle with writing 6 or 7 drafts of your novel, or you can use her proven method and write a bestseller right off the bat. That's pretty convincing, right? Now, a few other things, random things before we move on to these 2 fantastic examples. The hook. What is that riveting first line of your blurb? What is it that's going to catch your reader's eye, and what's going to keep them reading? So again, the last statistic that I heard was 300 queries coming across a desk a day. That's a lot of queries. That's a lot of things to put your eyes on. So think about that first line, that hook, and what's going to stand out to the audience you're trying to reach. The second thing I want you to think about is the tone of your blurb, not just what you write, but how you write it. Is your tone somber? Is it cheeky? Or is it instructive or compassionate? Like Brene Brown is a great example of that compassionate, gentle tone. How does it reflect the story that you're trying to sell? If your book is about surviving domestic abuse, it might not be the best thing to write in a sarcastic or humorous tone. If you're pitching a rom-com, however, your prose doesn't need to be heavy or pedantic. You could make it a bit more light, a bit more fun. You can use phrases like girlfriend and bottomless mimosas. I don't know. I don't really write in that genre, but that's just an example. Speaking of examples, I want to go into two different examples, one fiction, one nonfiction with you, and show you those 5 W's at work. I'm going to bring back up my screen here. The first one, as I teased, is The Devil Wears Prada. Andrea Sachs, a small town girl fresh out of college, lands the job a million girls would die for. Hired as the assistant to Miranda Priestley, high profile, fabulously successful editor of Runway magazine, Andrea finds herself in an office that shouts Prada, Armani, Versace at every turn. A world populated by impossibly thin, heart-wrenchingly stylish women and beautiful men clad in fine-ribbed turtlenecks and tight leather pants that show off their lifelong dedication to the gym. With breathtaking ease, Miranda can turn each and every one of these hip sophisticates into a scared, whimpering child. Andrea is sorely tested each and every day, and often late into the night, with orders barked over the phone. She puts up with it all by keeping her eyes on the prize, a recommendation from Miranda that will get her a top job at any magazine of her choosing. As things escalate from the merely unacceptable to the downright outrageous, Andrea begins to realize that the job a million girls would die for may just kill her. And if she survives, she has to decide whether or not it's worth the price of her soul. All right, that's just such a great one. Let's go through those 5 W's. Number 1, who? It's Andrea Sachs, a small town girl fresh out of college. But it's not just a name, right? We also get some context as to why Andrea is interesting. Why is she interesting? Because she just landed this job that millions of girls would die for. What is Andrea after? What motivates her? What is her agency? She wants that recommendation from Miranda. But we also get a little deeper into her character arc with the tone of the blurb, the words the author uses to describe Andy's point of view. This is a beautiful tone because it speaks so much more than the words. The author uses phrases like fabulously successful and heart-wrenchingly stylish. So we get the vibe that Andy doesn't just want the recommendation, she also wants to be like the people who she sees in this office. Now, what's the villain? What's getting in her way? What's stopping her from getting what she wants? Miranda's a total bitch. She is a horrible boss, and she makes incessant, ridiculous demands that are wearing Andy down to the bone. So that brings us to our next what. What does Andy need to do to overcome the obstacle? What is the journey? What is the adventure? Um, she basically just needs to survive. There's literally no other plan. There's no heist or quest or grand scheme. She just needs to stick it out. And finally, my favorite question, why do I care? What are the stakes? And this last W is why I love this blurb so damn much. The stakes are laid out so beautifully and so dramatically. This job just might work Andy to death. And even if she doesn't, she's losing who she is. She's losing her soul and her sense of self. So this is a beautiful one. I highly recommend going back to it if you're thinking about your own blurb. Fantastic example of fiction. So let's go ahead and move to one that's nonfiction. Boop. This next one here is from Story Genius, a book I highly recommend to all of my authors. The back cover reads, "It's every novelist's greatest fear, pouring their blood, sweat, and tears into writing hundreds of pages only to realize that their story has no sense of urgency, no internal logic, and so is a page one rewrite. The prevailing wisdom in the writing community is that there are just two ways around this problem: pantsing, winging it, and plotting, focusing on the external plot. Story coach Lisa Cron has spent her career discovering why these methods don't work and coming up with a powerful alternative based on the science behind what our brains are wired to crave in every story we read. And it's not what you think." In Story Genius, Cron takes you step by step through the creation of a novel, from the first glimmer of an idea to the complete multi-layered blueprint, including fully realized scenes that evolves into a first draft with the authority, richness, and command of a riveting 6th or 7th draft. So this is just a fantastic example. It starts out with an amazing book. It's every novelist's greatest fear. So if you write novels, you are immediately lasering into this. This book is for you. Who's it for? People who write novels. You want to relate to this. This isn't a book for everybody. It isn't a book for people who don't write novels, and that's okay. It is for you, somebody who is writing a novel. And who is that main character? It's you, the writer who specifically wants to write a novel. What do you want? To write a riveting novel as efficiently as possible. And what is keeping you from doing that? Well, that's clearly defined in the prevailing wisdom of pantsing and plotting. This whole second paragraph is just absolutely brilliant because it's basically showing us why the dichotomous labels of pantser and plotter don't work. They're antiquated. They're derivative. They're not scientific. So what must you do, you writer who wants to write the riveting novel, to overcome this obstacle? That's simple. You use the step-by-step method to write your book. And what are the stakes? They're pretty clear, and they're kind of painful, which makes them effective. You spend 6 or 7 drafts, quote unquote, hundreds of pages, writing something that doesn't work, or you use this method and you write something that does work. So the question that she phrases without saying directly, she never says this directly, but it's very heavily implied: would you be willing to spend $20 on a book if you knew it was going to save you hundreds of hours of work? And that is why this blurb is so effective. Remember our 5 W's, just to wrap it up. Who is our main character? What do they want? What is keeping them from what they want? What must they do to overcome that obstacle? And what are the stakes? If I can find those 5 questions somewhere in the blurb, my friends, you have done a fantastic job. Those are the components. That's the nitty gritty. And with that being said, yeah, there it is. There it is. That about wraps it up for today, because we don't want me messing with PowerPoint anymore. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, WriteHive, for hosting me. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be here. I will be hanging out in Discord to answer questions, but if you still have more after the conference, please feel free to connect with me. You can connect on Discord, on Twitter, or on my website, www.authorhannahcates.com. So again, Thank you for being here. Thank you for your attention and for your blurbing curiosity. And I hope to see you somewhere in the conference at the rest of the on the Discord. So good conference.